then the cheaper it is. In fact, a $200,000 policy for someone aged 50 is under $1,000, is about $600 or $700 a year. That's not a lot of money for a $200 banking account where you can draw money down to pay for long-term care. And I often say too that some is better than none, because even if you can't afford a large pool, in this economy, at the very least you can have some funds to pay for respite care. It's very difficult for someone to spend every waking day with a needy parent and not be able to get away, for themselves and to get some kind of respite. It's just really a very important thing.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I want to make sure that all of the my listeners heard correctly, because when we talk about price, and sometimes we think this is going to be extremely expensive. Excuse me, but so you're saying that a policy costing $1,000 a year would provide, how much coverage?
Well, I had an example that I brought with me, but a $300,000, which is really quite adequate, it would cost between $500 to $600 for someone 50 and under. When you start to get into the 60s, then you're looking at maybe $1,000. It really depends on what you buy, but that's still a very healthy pool of money that you can draw against for long-term care.
Wow,
So that's quite reasonable.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And it can be used in a variety of ways. It doesn't mean that a person would need the care all the time, but it might be respite at first for someone who's helping out, and then maybe later on, or coming into the home, assisting a person just in their taking care of themselves. So it could be used in a variety of ways.
Oh, absolutely, and that really is how care happens. There is some family support, and then there is some home health care, and it does provide coverage in any setting, and also for assistive devices like grab bars. You might have to redo parts of your home to accommodate your elder, and so it pays for those things as well. So also the average stay in a nursing home, by the way, is really only 2 to 3 years, for a nursing home stay at the end. So there's all these other types of things that you can do prior to that.
Well, when a parent is aging and comes to the point where perhaps they need some assistance, this can be a pretty emotional time. So in addition to thinking about the finances or the actual support that someone could provide, one has to deal with the emotions of someone who's perhaps been very active all of their lives, and now they can't quite do all that they wanted to do. But if it's your loved one, you certainly want to love them, let them know that they're still valued and respect them. So you're dealing with a lot of things all at once. If you don't mind, I think you had a situation where you provided care for your father. Do you mind sharing a bit of that?
Oh, no. Actually, it was really quite an eye-opener for myself. My dad came to live with my husband and myself, and he had really initially needed just, he could get around, he just needed to live with someone, and that evolved to standby care, meaning you don't have to really have any hands-on help. It's just, want to make sure that he takes his pills, those kinds of things. And then finally, really hands-on care. But what really happened, talk about the emotionality of it, you're really not prepared to do this, in terms of the child-parent relationship. Unless someone is adjudicated and competent, they really can say what it is they want and don't want, and it's really a struggle always to try and, give the best of care. And it's very hard emotionally. There's really like an uptick in elder abuse and neglect because of some of the frustration and difficulty that that families can face. It's very important to get good training, to try and get some respite and backup, and not be the solution or share the burden with other members of the family. And it's so important to plan ahead. My husband had to give up his business and spend all the time with them because the costs were just phenomenal, all the time with my dad. So again, unfortunately, this is what happens to families. They lose their future and they lose their retirement, planning, etc., when they have to stop and then take care of the parent often.
For one thing, I just want to say I appreciate your providing that primary care for your father. I think that's it's a wonderful thing, a beautiful thing. But even then, of course, you could have used probably even more support in doing that. Again, added the frustrations, remembering to care for not only yourself and your husband, but for your father, and your husband doing the same. That's a stressor. But then, was it difficult seeing your father in a different role than what he had been for most of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting because you know, I used to talk to my dad when he was very robust. He actually was he lifted weights, and he's very robust looking, well into his 70s. And he used to always remark about people in a nursing home or say, if I'm like that, shoot me. You know, that's kind of the first, feeling. But then when you get there and you're enjoying life, you have some quality of life, you really want the help and support. And so suddenly your attitude changes. So, naturally, he was a lot more willing to take that kind of help. And sometimes parents don't want that, and you have a lot of difficulty with getting them to accept help from a family member. So there's really a lot of issues. It's really good to think about this well in advance and plan with your family.
I can imagine that in some ways it could really put stress on the relationship. In other ways, it might even bring you closer together because you do have that opportunity to spend time together, but also you're giving and receiving, which has a tendency to bring people together. Thank you for sharing your own personal story. Tell me about the impact of caregiving on women and their financial security. You were in a situation where you and your husband were actually doing this together, but I imagine it impacts women in a specific way.
Yes, it does, and it's very much a women's issue because they're primarily the caregiver. And I had some statistics I want to jot down to make sure I got this, because it's really quite compelling. The average caregiver is a 46-year-old female, married and working. 13% are age 65 and older. 33% of working women decrease their work hours. 29% pass up job promotions, training, or plum assignments. 22% take leave of absence. 20% switch from full-time to part-time, and 13% quit their jobs. And so you can see, the trajectory quite easily. They're at higher risk for depression, for medical conditions, and of course they aren't preparing themselves for retirement. So it's really quite a toll on women in particular.
So a person may be sacrificing kind of a portion of some of their future and dreams that they had hoped to achieve, obviously for someone that they care about, but it could be very difficult. So thinking ahead makes a lot of good sense.
Absolutely.
What challenges does the long-term care insurance industry face in the light of healthcare reform? I mean, obviously that's a big topic right now. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes, I'm afraid that really with all of the talk around the healthcare issues and legislation that's being developed, it kind of further exacerbates the lack of knowledge and understanding of long-term care. It's really not covered in any of the discussions around long-term care in and of itself. So it's really kind of relegated to a different venue. There are a couple of bills, Senator Grassley and Kerry and Grassley are seeking to allow for some kind of relief, tax relief, either by using your cafeteria plan to pay for long-term care premiums, or above-the-line tax savings that you can apply to your long-term care premiums. So there's incentives to get people to become aware and to get covered. But I think the biggest issue is really just kind of mixing the two, not really understanding Medicare from Medicaid, from long-term care. And I think that's the need for really educating the public on what it is and what it is not in a robust way, I think is so very important. And that's why I was very happy to see some of the early forays into education, such as Own Your Future. I know Michigan did an Own Your Future campaign in 2006. And those types of things to just raise the public awareness.